Hello and welcome to There's No A in Creamy. I'm your guest co-host, Attorney General Charity Clark, and I'll be joined by fellow guest co-host Owen Foster, Chair of the Green Mountain Care Board.
Joanna, first question, why would you ever dream of entrusting Charity and I to ask you questions on this special occasion?
Hello, Vermont. I'm Andy Julo.
And I'm Joanna Grossman.
And this is There's No A in Creamy.
Vermont, politics, culture, and beyond.
Thanks for joining us.
Hello and welcome to There's No A in Creamy. I'm your guest co-host, Attorney General Charity Clark, and I'll be joined by fellow guest co-host Owen Foster, Chair of the Green Mountain Care Board. Today we have two very special guests, Joanna Grossman and Andy Julo, your regular hosts and founders of this show. Why the role reversal, Owen?
Today is a special day. It is the Podiversary of There's No A in Creamy, and Charity and I have been kindly asked to guest host today's show and interview our regular hosts. Joanna, first question, why would you ever dream of entrusting Charity and I to ask you questions on this special occasion?
Yeah. Hi, folks. It's me, Joanna. You have not tuned into the wrong podcast. And I'm sitting here with Andy.
Should I say something?
So they can hear your voice. Yeah. So why? I mean, you two are fan favorites and friends of ours, and we really wanted to kind of honor the year. Charity was also our first guest on the podcast, and we didn't want you to know that you were our first guest because we were like, this is like new, and we were like, let's just like play it cool, you know? And it was really a wonderful episode, and Owen's episode is the top performing episode of the series. Fun fact.
The top perform. How does it feel to be prom king?
Very consistent.
There is one on your heels, though. I will say that.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Don't get complacent.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Healthcare episodes are big.
Yeah.
Better hope this one goes well, Owen.
Interesting.
But we're just really excited to have you guys here.
Well, awesome. It's so good to be here. Did you have a follow-up question?
Well, I did have a question. So Charity's been on twice, I saw.
Right.
So you have other guests who have been on twice.
Becca White.
Yep. I feel like there's one other.
Molly Gray.
Molly Gray.
Yeah.
Interesting. So this actually is your third then.
It's true.
Yeah. And we haven't done the data to like add those together or anything to try to figure out how the metrics stack up.
Her two versus my one.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah.
But if we wanted to, the capability's there.
We'll work on that. We'll get the interns on that.
Do you need that for your campaign, Owen?
There's 3 politicians here, not 4. Well, the topics and the substance of the podcast stand out, and they're often meaty current events and issues that we see in the State House and playing out throughout the state. But one of the more interesting aspects of the show is actually the hosts and your relationship with each other. It comes across in every episode I've listened to. And I guess my first question is, who are you guys and how did this podcast come to be?
You go first.
Oh, I go first?
Well, I don't know.
Sure. So I grew up in the islands. I did a little bit of school board work and work on the DRB. I tried a couple of times to run for the House, and it was close, but didn't happen. And then a few years later, I was kind of surprisingly to myself appointed to the state Senate and found myself in a pretty heated race for re-election and had to reach out to somebody for help. And I ended up with Joanna for a number of different reasons. Well, yeah, it was a number of different reasons. We covered that on the first episode.
Yeah.
And ran for Senate, got to know a ton of people in the political space, like Charity and others. It's a great experience. Didn't win, but came out of that with a friend, and ultimately a co-host on the podcast.
Yeah. So I'm originally from New York. Me and my husband moved here 20 years ago. We live in Burlington. And I did a lot of government tech stuff for a long time. And then when Trump was elected the first time, I started getting involved, I guess, again in politics. And there was a need for people with technical skills in what they call the movement space, the sort of space building to push back on the Trump existence. And I started getting more involved as an organizer, which is something I had done a little when I was younger. And, ended up going to work for Indivisible for a couple election cycles. And then I had friends here who were like, hey, you know, Vermonters need help with their campaigns here too. And I basically came home and started up a little boutique campaign management and digital organizing agency here. And then I recognized that the Democratic Party needed some help and support to like build, especially helping down ballot candidates. And I ended up running for county chair of Chittenden County, and I served a term doing that. And that was when I met Andy, and he reached out about me running his campaign, and I turned him down.
She did.
He called back, and I'm glad he did. It was an amazing race, and even though we didn't win, I came out with a new best friend. And our political partnership has been really wonderful, and obviously we got this amazing podcast out of it, and we're so grateful. I hear a lot. It's great for me to have like a political partner who I know I can trust and I can count on. And I think a lot of our listeners really respond to that. Like politics can be such a cutthroat and divisive space. And I think that I like the idea that we're sort of modeling a different way where you can trust people and you can build community and relationships and grow that. And I guess I went a little broad and deep there, but that's what it is for me.
How did this podcast come about?
It was a joke.
Like every good idea.
Okay, you go ahead.
Don't you think I should?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you have to.
Okay, so during Andy's Senate campaign, we had an office. If you listen to episode 1, you'll hear a little about it. So we had an office in the back of a literal bike shop in Colchester. This really nice guy who owns this bike shop gave us space. We had literally a folding table and folding chairs. I mean, it was so scrappy.
We were on AstroTurf, too.
Literal AstroTurf.
Yeah.
It was great. And anyway, that's backstory. It didn't really need. But people would
Obviously
come
not
in.
PFAS.
Yeah, probably. And people would come in to volunteer all the time, right? And I thought it was hilarious to tell people that Andy and I were going to start a podcast called Julo and the Jew. Because I'm Jewish. And I thought this was just the funniest joke ever. Obviously, I still do. But it was really just a punchline. And then, we obviously stayed in touch after the campaign and, started doing some organizing work together with the party. And we started being maybe we really should do a podcast. And that was really how it started.
And how did you come up with this name?
Oh, there's no way and creamy. We talk about that a little on you take that one.
Well, we knew we couldn't do Julo and the Jew because when you said it, people would laugh. And when I said it, looking like an extra on Indiana Jones 5, it didn't come off as well. So, yeah, we had to come up with a different name.
Yeah.
But I think it's about the juxtaposition of her being from New York, me being from Vermont, and what are some of the things that separate us? And this notion came up of creamies and how strange that appears to outsiders and how long it took you to get used to it.
Yeah. I mean, the word is weird to out-of-staters.
And why isn't there an A in it if it's cream?
Right.
Why indeed.
Yeah.
Because I once was driving to work wanting to listen to the latest episode, and so I looked into my computer in my car, and I spelled it with an A. And I was like, oh my God, what was I thinking? It's right in the
people
title.
do that. We hear about that all the time. A lot of my out-of-state friends do that.
So, I have no excuse. That's embarrassing for a 10th generation Vermonter. I should know better.
I'm only 9.
Yeah, just make a note for your campaign.
I'm so outnumbered here.
Opposition research.
What were you trying to fill a void in media, or why were you wanting to start a podcast? What were you trying to accomplish?
I feel there was a little bit of a loyal opposition missing, a little bit of honest conversations, hard conversations, giving people space to speak about issues, whether it's candidates or advocates or elected officials, without worrying so much about saying the right thing or conforming to a certain party line or dogma. We just kind of wanted to create some space. And we also had a lot to say about our experiences and really wanting to rebuild trust with the voters.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the long-form conversation is something that we don't have. I mean, media is so short and so shaped that if we could sit down and have conversations with people and let it flow and get people comfortable and start to, flush out some of the things you don't hear in the media.
I observed that in my experience. I almost forgot I was being recorded and that it would be public. And you guys do such a good job of making the guests feel like they're in your living room and you're just having a conversation, for better and worse as a guest, I guess I would say. What are some of your favorite podcast memories?
You want to
Shack.
go for the Shack?
Yeah, just in general. So when we started the series, we were in the skate shack behind Andy's office, and it's like a literal shack full of ice skates, and we were just kind of like stuffed in there. And I don't know, I just have very fond memories of that space and like beginning our like creative collaboration there.
Yeah, and this isn't on air, but I think the first few meetings we had to talk about this and to flush it out, and we've been through some rough experiences where we had to count on others, and they just didn't come through for us. And I think as we started to map this out, we kind of started to realize that this is something we had 100% control over. It was just the two of us, and we could make it work. I think my favorite on-air experience is when Joanna went chicken killer on me over Zipper Merge.
I listened to that episode.
Me too. I think I
Zipper
remember that. But that was
merge.
a while ago.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah.
I don't think we want to reopen that one, but
I'm a firm believer in the zipper merge. I'm going to go on record.
Were there any guests or topics that surprised you?
Oh.
we had an episode with Matt Musgrave from the Associated Building Contractors, and they have a construction academy that they've started. And, I think the intent of going into that was to talk about, the labor force for housing, and it just ended up being more than that. And it was really about the struggle of youth, and particularly young men, trying to find their place in this world. And we ended up in that space, and I didn't see it coming, but we all went with it, and it just had such an inspirational, emotional feel to it.
I was going to say the same episode.
yeah.
I love that episode. It's a total sleeper. Like, it was early in the series, and, it didn't get quite as many listens as some of the A-listers who've been on, but it was really inspiring. And like, if you need a little bit of inspo, I definitely encourage you to go back and listen to it. Matt was wonderful, and what he's doing for Vermont is incredible.
I thought the Alex Leclerc episode
Yes.
was fascinating too. Again, kind of a sleeper episode in a way.
Oh, it did really well in the analytics.
He was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And just sort of the lived experience of a young person trying to afford healthcare and housing in Vermont. Like, he really embodied some of the challenges.
And that was something we stumbled into too, because we brought him in under one idea, and then we kind of realized this is the struggle right now with Vermonters. Smart, young Vermonter living in his parents' basement. This is what it's all about.
Who want to be here and make it work. And they confront these challenges that a lot of people in some of the political circles work on. And there's the face of what it means for the people struggling.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good one.
I was in the legislature this morning, and one of the topics that came up was, the outcry that happens when we try and solve problems in Vermont. And it's interesting to me, because I have outcry in my role too, but the voices are really, really loud for a small number of people and stakeholders.
Yeah.
And it's some of those voices of like Matt or Alex that you don't actually have in front of you. And policymakers and decision makers have to confront the reality of these voices that are so loud, while not losing sight of the Alexes and the others that we have to actually really work for. And it
I think
makes
that's
it a challenge.
one of the biggest challenges of being a legislator, as you're juggling everything. And we just, especially right now, the end of the session, and you see it happening, and we always have to hustle to try to be there to counteract any kind of misinformation or maybe sloppy information from people who have a lot of power already and a lot of resources, which is why they've hired people to help them. And then the average person, their voice is not heard.
Yeah, what's going on in the state house or your email inbox is a different picture than what's going on out in the rest of the state.
Yeah.
It's actually part of the work of curating the podcast, too. It's become part of the work because, this started as like a glorified mic test, and now like Vermont is listening. So, we try to think really thoughtfully about who we bring in.
Did you call it misinformation or sloppy information?
Yes,
Is that
I
the
did.
term? It's charitable.
Well, it suits. All right. Let's talk about the media landscape.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why Owen and I are both fans of the podcast is that Vermont's local media landscape has become rather sparse over the years, as we've all experienced. And I think people are hungry for conversations, talking about policies, getting into it. And we have noticed, we both love how positive the vibe of this podcast is, because there's a lot of despair in the world. And I think, especially among Democrats, people are wringing their hands. And I think it doesn't have to be that way. So I really appreciate this. We would love to hear what your observations are about the changing media landscape and how you think podcasts like this one fit in.
I mean, it's funny. I grew up with the New York City press corps and really watched how they were so, like, they would get to the bottom of any story that was out there. And I always thought that was sort of the norm for how journalists function. On the other hand, they were also really harsh and really went into some stuff that maybe wasn't necessary. But, Vermont is such a beautiful and inspiring and tiny state. We have really tiny resources just to start with. And then our media landscape is small and it's shrinking and it's underfunded and under-resourced. We've always made a point to, say that, we don't consider ourselves real journalists. Like, podcasting isn't the same as journalism. We're not held to the same standards. Like, we try to be accurate and we try to fact check and we take that stuff seriously. But we aren't held to the same standard and level of accountability. That's just like who we are and how we function. But podcasters and bloggers in general often don't do that. And I do think it's important for consumers of new media to be aware of that. I mean, we love journalists. As a candidate, I've loved being interviewed by Vermont's journalists, because we have some really amazing young journalists on the landscape who are incredible. And we tried to support them. We've interacted with them, helping them with stories now and then too. Yeah.
What do you think, Andy?
I mean, I think things have become very splintered, and we have more choices now than ever before. But in some ways, we've lost a little bit with that. I think when the Free Press and CAX were our only choices, those venues, they had to tell the whole story and keep it kind of general. And now that we're more fractured, all of those different news sources come in with a little bit of an angle and are kind of driving the story. And I think that's what we wanted not to do. We're both builders. We're positive. We wanted to sit down, have longer conversations, and kind of get to the core of people and the issues.
I'm kind of obsessed with this issue, but part of it is because when I first started out in politics, I worked for Governor Howard Dean. It was the late 90s, early 2000s, and he had a press conference every week on Wednesday. The press corps was enormous. And I used to say, or I still say, we lived the news and then we watched the news. Read the paper, and what happened during a day was reflected in the news. And you just don't see that anymore because there's simply not enough. But I will say, now that I am, a leader myself, something that I really lament is the loss of opinion pages. That's really helpful for a leader to receive information that way. Yep. And for example, when I first started as AG, I had the office subscribe to all these newspapers, local newspapers throughout the state. And one of them, I'd already subscribed to this for this reason, but the Caledonian Record is the most conservative newspaper in the state. They have a pretty strict paywall, and they have an opinion. They used to. They just ended it, but they had an editorial page. Wow. And it was great because you get to, that's the heartbeat of the community. It can be reflected on the opinion page. Yep. How do you think a podcast can kind of fill that role in some respects?
That's interesting, because I think when you have an opinion page, you're very clear. You're right at the top. This is an opinion, and you can be more free. And I think that we may capture some of that, and that we're not trying to impartially tell a story. We're trying to tell a story at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've wrestled with that a little bit about how opinionated we want to be and how objective we want to be, because it's up to us. It's our entity, Yeah, I mean, we're definitely on the left of the spectrum for sure. But I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, people do often, know how we feel about an issue, but we try to tell the whole story.
Yeah, and you're showcasing, you're not hiding your opinions about things,
right.
But you're also showcasing your guests. It's like a different animal.
Well, and I think we try to be clear that we would welcome the opposite view.
Yes.
On the next week's episode. That to me is how you get to the truth.
Yeah.
You hear from one side, and then you hear a counterpoint, and then you hear another. You can continue to narrow in on the truth if you allow people to speak and back and forth with space and don't interrupt them.
Yeah, you're treating them fairly, respectfully, equally the same, and it's fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
One of the things I like about the podcast, so I read a lot of news, of course. And there is some good long form journalism here. 7 Days does some deeper dives that are really, really valuable. I remember when I did the Purdue Pharma case, when we made this allegation, it's originally called Pharma Company A, and no one knew who Pharma Company A was. And all these national people were looking to break, who is this pharma company? All these national outlets, and the only person who broke it was Derek Brewer at 7 Days. He figured it out before anyone else in the country. And I always thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
But the podcast is cool because you can walk and listen to it. You know, you can listen to it in the car. You don't have to read. I mean, I read too, but I enjoy that aspect of it quite a bit. When you're both Democrats, and when you're not afraid of being critical, though, of your party.
Right.
And that's one thing that I think is important, is that you are willing to shine a light on things that, in your opinion, need change. How do you do that and still feel comfortable? Because one of the things I worry about in Vermont is we're so small, it's hard for us to really voice concerns because we can have backlash against us in doing it. How have you found your voice and your ability to thread that needle?
I mean, my culture has a strong tradition of debate, and I guess I have always felt like my role in the world and in the way of like repairing things and improving our community and our state is to help us evolve. And if we're acting like everything is perfect all the time, then we're not doing that. You know, we're just like, life changes, people change, the needs of Vermonters change. And I mean, it has been hard. Like, I would say as a party leader, I was always kind of saying, hey, like, maybe we could try this. Like, maybe we should do this. And that did not always make me popular with party leadership. I mean, I'll totally own that. But to me, that's the work of evolving the party, is not pretending there's no problems, but by going to those hard places and recognizing what they are and figuring out how to solve them.
And I'd say in my own career, I've been fortunate to have great bosses, a number of them. And the one thing that they all had in common as a trait was they wanted to look at what we weren't doing well.
Right.
And they did not want to brush it under. That was what we talked about. And it's interesting that you've embodied that in the podcast. And I've listened to it, and I appreciate it.
And I think having a supportive partner in this just helps. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I don't really care if we get in trouble because, I mean,
You're going down together.
Yes,
Honestly,
exactly.
sometimes we really feel like that, yeah.
Little foxhole mentality here. Although I've noticed that you're very clear on the
This is the
line
line.
demarcation on the couch.
For those who aren't watching and you're listening, Andy and Joanna are sharing a couch, but they are like two siblings who've taped a tape down the center of their room, which my sister and I did as children. One is very strictly wants to have her space, not impeded by the larger person she's sharing the sofa with.
We have a remarkable amount of like sibling moments. I'm convinced we're like long lost twins. So yeah.
Andy, I notice your foot's a little.
No, I think it's.
a
No, you're
violation.
okay. You're okay. I'm
Top
gonna give you a
prosecutor
waiver.
over here is ready to get out my
We didn't
pad.
tape the floor.
We don't. We'll fight later.
And that is something I want to talk a little bit more about, is the ability to address hard issues that may actually create some backlash or, some complication for you in your own professional lives. And Charity often in her remarks speaks about how democracy is holding. There's new challenges and new efforts to use more power in the federal government, and something that Charity works on a lot is pushing back against that. And she does always champion how well the system is holding. But we all know there's fractures and there's challenges nationally and locally. What are some of the things that you've observed in your roles, either as campaign manager, politician, candidate, podcast host, where you think democracy, either here or federally, can be improved upon?
You want to take that one first?
Take that first. Democracy be improved upon. Well, I think we need to remember that, and just the mindset, the process is the most important part. Like any outcome, no matter how important it seems in the moment, is temporary. But the process is what we need to last. I mean, we've had just a small example. I mean, we've had a few fights in my town over the last few years about where the town hall would go. And it's always so catastrophic. Like, if this happens, all these bad things are going to happen. If we choose this site, all these bad things are going to happen. And we have to get it to this vote. And do we? What if we just allowed people, what if we just had a free exchange of information and we had a vote, and whatever problems we had to deal with, we just dealt with together, and then we moved on to the next issue? Isn't that more important than where we have a town hall?
That's a good answer. I'm
Beat
my
that, Joanna.
my brain went to a totally different place. To me, one of the challenges of democracy, especially in Vermont, is cultural, that we sort of like fetishize incumbency. And incumbency is just incredibly powerful here. And people kind of feel like, oh, they don't, yes, I'm running in a primary right now, so of course I think that. But I've always felt like that. When I was a campaign manager and I had my own agency, I would have candidates coming to me all the time saying they wanted to run, but they were afraid to primary and they were waiting for an open seat. And they might have been the better option, but voters didn't get that chance because they were intimidated to run against an incumbent. And I heard that so much. I still hear it all the time. It's so common. And I just don't think that's in the interest of democracy.
And sometimes incumbents sort of threaten potential newcomers.
Are you referring to me? I'm threatening you.
And sometimes we see incumbents bully potential.
I offered you pretzels.
That's very
I think they're
real.
laced. Or is that the chocolate?
Oh, yeah, we have that too.
Yeah, not everybody's thrilled about me running. I can say that for sure. Yeah.
Well, on some level, we get challenged in some of our work, and I actually think it's some of the best part of the process. Is like, how do we know that I've made a good decision or my board's made a good decision? And that process is a check. And if we got it wrong, we want to know. And I've actually been appealed our board a number of times, and Charity's office has very ably and successfully defended us. But when we went through that process, my view was if the limits are somewhere else, this helps us know where they are. So being challenged actually makes everything better in my mind.
The other thing that's worth pointing out is that we don't have term limits in Vermont.
Right.
Instead, we have a 2-year term for everything.
Yeah.
So in other places, I know this year especially because I think there's 36 state attorney general races happening right now. And some of them are because of term limits. So someone probably would have stayed if they could, but then they don't have the 2-year term. The 2-year term allows, I think that it impacts incumbency in a different way. I remember when I was at UVM and I took a voting behavior, one of the things you learn is that no one is ever as popular as the day they're elected. And they get less popular. And then right before the election, the incumbent suddenly is like, I don't really like them, but I like them better than the new guy or the new gal, the new person. And so I wonder, it's such an interesting contrast between all the other states except for New Hampshire. They don't have a 2-year term for AG, but they have a 2-year term for governor. It is really interesting. Like, I don't know that the 2-year terms are a real conundrum. It seems to work for everybody, but those of us who have a 2-year term.
Yeah.
I don't know. I actually have always felt like the 2-year term sort of cheapens the opportunity to vote. I always feel like if it was a 4-year term, people would take it more seriously. Like, we're going to have to wait another 4 years. We better really click in.
Oh, from a voter perspective?
Yeah, from a voter perspective.
We have good voter turnout, don't we?
Yes, but the incumbents are incredibly powerful, and I just think their role would be more examined if people were only up every 4 years.
Well, they would have, my example from voting behavior, they would have more time to become dissatisfied.
Yeah, that's true.
So the arc would go down, down, lower until they had that bump of no, they're not that bad.
Yeah, it's true.
I used to wish we had 4-year terms, but the last time I ran, running for election is so important. I used to view it as a burden. And I learned to embrace it. And I think it is important to get out of the State House, go out there, knock on doors, go to events, go to parades, face-to-face with people. I think it makes you a better legislator.
You learn so much.
You really do.
So much. Especially my office, we do so many different things. And when I'm campaigning, I realize, this particular thing that I think is important, but I wouldn't have guessed would be the most important. In 2024, that was our social media cases. People were really, really, really into our social media cases, and I think that it impacted my view of. We already sued, but it impacted my view of the cases, and also how hard to fight for some of the information that the social media companies, TikTok in particular, was trying to hide from the public. Yeah. Because I knew the public needed to know because they were already so upset about social media and the impact that it was having on young people.
Yeah, and some of the most important issues are the ones that come from people who don't have the time to tell you otherwise. You have to chase them down,
Yes.
knock on their door, and talk to them before you know that they're an issue.
Yes.
So Andy, on balance, you would support a 2-year term over a 4-year term?
I think it's healthy. I think there's pros and cons to either, but I think getting out there and campaigning every 2 years it makes us a better system.
Joanna, what about you?
I think if I was given the option, I'd prefer a 4-year. Yeah.
I won't ask you.
I have an answer.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
I think my family would want a 4-year term, but as a leader, I think a 2-year term is best.
Interesting. So as a layman, I think I would support a 4-year term. I just think it sort of the pressure it incentivizes short-term outcomes to have a 2-year term because you want to show voters you did something. And then second, I think that our elected leaders having to spend so much time fundraising or campaigning and not really focusing on the work can kind of be a distraction. And and a lot of what we see is the short-term interests. And so a 4-year term, I think, gives them a little bit more of a chance. But that's my own 2 cents.
It would make long-term planning for the state easier. Yeah.
Right. You look federally, like when I deal with healthcare issues, you have these federal policies, and then they're all kind of like thrown out the door. And then you got new ones, and they're kind of and it's like we can't really gain traction because we're always changing what we're doing as that door spins. And it makes it very difficult. But
That's funny. That's kind of what Steve Leffler said when he was on.
Yeah, I spoke with him last night, and I listened to his episode again yesterday. And I really appreciate that he said that. He wanted a 3 to 5 year planning process, and I think he's right. And we did at the board, we had a 2-year planning process. But when we did the first time, everyone kind of came back and said, well, we spent all the money the first year, so now we need more money, and your 2-year target's no good. So I know Steve is in a different place now than they used to be, but I would agree with a 3-year. But we have to mean it when we do it.
Right.
So. One question I wanted, this is interesting for me because we have a current politician, a former politician, and a candidate. And politicians often get a bad rap. And I want to know from each of you, what do you think people misunderstand about politicians? And I'll start with you.
Oh, go ahead.
That we're people, that we are just people that were pulled out of the crowd or decided to run. And we're not dissimilar from voters. I think there's sometimes a distance between people who are in elected office and those who are out.
And isn't that like one of the greatest things, though, in Vermont? I remember when I was a kid, your ability to just run into politicians or meet them or know them, or they're your cousins or whatever, friends, cousins, whatever it might be, you have a closeness in Vermont that lets you have better access to democracy and your elected leaders.
Yeah, and they'd like to hear from you. If you think you're bothering your senator or your representative, don't think that.
Yeah.
Reach out. They want to hear from you.
Yeah. Joanna, what about you?
I mean, I really have always thought of myself as more of an organizer and really like a community builder. And that's really where I come at it, is trying to, build and kind of represent our district and community. That's so much of why I'm running. Some people get into it because they want power. That's not really what I'm interested in. I'm really interested in the ability to give voice and to, create positive change. So I guess, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I think the point about positive change and like the earnestness with which many of our politicians approach the job is sometimes lost on people.
Yeah.
And Attorney General Clark, what do you think is most misunderstood about politicians?
I think that a lot of people don't realize the motivation for politicians. I mean, it is not fun to put yourself out there. You feel very exposed and vulnerable, and then people say mean things about you on Facebook. Ask me how I know. I think people don't realize that most politicians are not egomaniacs. They really care about their communities. They are, in many cases, making a professional sacrifice. They could be doing something else that didn't require getting hate mail, and instead they chose this because they could see that leaders were needed, and they really wanted to make a difference. And I see in the State House, there's so many people. Overwhelmingly, most of the people there are really there collaborating, and they take the hits and they just keep trying to do better for Vermont. And it's really inspiring to see. And you see that across I mean, the state's attorneys, the legislators, the statewide, the governor's office. I mean, all across, you see people who are they're really trying to do the right thing and collaborate. And it's honestly, I mean, I think it's really inspiring. And I think a lot of people, if you look at the comments on Facebook, really don't see that. And I wish they could, because I think that they would feel a lot better about their government if they could understand their real motivation.
Do you worry that the cruelty that you see in social media and email that just didn't used to be present might dissuade good people from doing this?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So before I ran, I did Emerge Vermont, which is a Democratic campaign school for women. And the first class that we had, my cohort was like maybe 25 people. And we were to list some of the reasons why we didn't want to run, like what was keeping us from running. And it was still the pandemic. And so it was done online. And there was a tool where it was like we were all editing the same Google Doc at the same time, only instead of our name, it was like an animal. So it was anonymous. And so you felt very comfortable saying the thing. And it was amazing how common the same themes. And I think the most popular one was like feeling of, safety, personal safety, and a lot of the other reasons why people were reluctant to run. I think it does really discourage people. And it's so much better here in Vermont than it is in other places. I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like in a real mean, cutthroat place where people are really cruel. I think generally people here are kind and try to. It's too small in Vermont to hate your neighbor. It's like at some point you're going to be the one in the ditch, and you're going to need them to pull you out. So I think it's better here than in other places.
Yeah,
Did you
it's
get
so
that from
strange
Frank
though,
Bryan?
because you get
That's a Frank Bryan joke he used to always say at UVM.
Really?
Are Vermonters a nicer breed of people? And the answer is no. You're just nicer because you're going to be the one in the ditch next time.
Right.
So that's not a joke. That's a true fact.
It's odd though. I had trolls that I would actually see at the store who were perfectly pleasant to me, and then they would go online and say the most horrible things.
I always wonder if they're a bot. I think I give people the benefit of the doubt. So I'm like, this can't be real.
There are some who were chaperones on my Cub Scout trips and parents of people I went to school with, and it's like, what happened here?
One of the things that I loved about being a campaign manager, and I think something that sort of drew me towards that was I just have this like very sort of protective I have this like Jewish mom kind of like vibe where I just want to protect the people around me. And I really Andy knows this, like I would really want to protect my candidates from like the emotionally hard things. And I would, scrape their social media and like pull off all the nasty stuff whenever I could. And I would definitely miss some things, and sometimes you had to leave some things for different reasons. But it's interesting running myself and seeing in just this short period of time how many like hateful comments I've got of all different kinds, and some like directed towards members of my family and my community. And it does kind of give me pause now about like, I would want to prepare someone else of my demographic differently for this.
The biggest head nod we've seen out of Andy is when you described yourself as a protective Jewish mom.
Yes.
Okay, I've called up my file on my on my phone of my photos called Social Media Hate and Online Come-Ons. So this is my all-time favorite. I'm reading it to you.
Right.
It's my all-time favorite. This has to be a bot. So this was in 2022 when I was running, and I think it was in the primary. And I put this very plain vanilla, like vote for me, consumer protection, public safety, protect the environment kind of stuff. And you see, it's all people I know, friends in my life, friends I went to school with. Good luck, Charity, impressive. Like, yeah, this looks great. Like, love reading this. Okay, and then we get a mysterious person with no profile picture, and they say the following. The first word is your, but they spelled it Y-U-R. Okay,
Always.
Classic.
You're not showing your teeth enough. You look stupid when you talk. You're gonna lose. Don't like the way you talk with your teeth showing. Isn't it hilarious?
That would have gone in my compliment box.
I know.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
I'm like, also, does anyone know how to talk without your teeth showing?
You just show off with your perfect teeth.
Like, yeah, that just like, yeah,
It's
it
my
makes me
favorite.
like, Yeah, makes my blood boil.
But I
No,
think
that
that's
one's
one of the nice
hilarious.
things about the podcast is we do have long conversations
Yeah.
with politicians
Yeah,
and
of course.
hopefully show some of their human side. And
Yeah. Hopefully we're a little piece of the antidote.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, you definitely are.
It's nice to hear.
You jumped around.
I know. I'm sorry.
We do that to each other all the time. We like steal each other's questions. Well, I steal Andy's
Okay.
questions. Andy's very
All
well
right, this is
behaved.
one I did want to ask about. On the show, Joanna, you explained how the decks can be stacked for incumbents.
Oh, yeah.
And Governor Dean, I believe on this show, called the Democratic Party a, quote, incumbent protection agency.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe some of those structures that you think Vermont could address to improve upon our democracy?
Yeah, I mean, we have so the Democratic Party in Vermont is not the same as other states. Every state's a little bit different, but every state's party bylaws commit the party to neutrality on paper. But the party actually both legally and financially supports the caucuses, part of whose mission is to support incumbents against primary challenges. And I think a lot of donors and volunteers don't really understand necessarily that that's part of what they're contributing to. And I really believe in party neutrality. I've been on the record about this for years. I feel really emphatically that the winners of primaries should be chosen exclusively by the voters, and that the party shouldn't be tilting the tables or picking favorites.
If the tables are tilted, question how much democracy that is.
Right. I mean, I guess that's for me. I just want the voters to be able to fully trust the party, that they weren't, there was so much hostility after the Hillary-Bernie race, and a lot of people felt like the party had kind of set up
Right.
Bernie to fail, and it's just one example. Yeah.
And do you have any perspectives on campaign financing post Citizens United and the impacts of that decision?
You want to take that?
You look to me on that one?
Well, I thought you were up for that one.
I mean, certainly the amount of money and institutional power in elections has gotten worse. I do wonder, though, if it's more the splintering of media that's become a bigger problem, and the commercialization of media. I think it used to be something that we used to bridge people's dinner to prime time, right? And it was kind of a low-cost service that networks offered. And there weren't that many networks. So you had to not offend anybody and keep it kind of general. And now we have, news is a big commercial enterprise,
Right.
And it's kind of designed to feed what you already think. And I think we've lost something with that direction.
And interestingly, as we sit here, there's all these other ways where people can engage themselves in a media effort with a low barrier to entry, which we didn't have before, which allows for greater access to different sources, which is good and bad.
Yep.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode.
Thank you all for listening.
Follow us between episodes for the latest updates on our socials at There's No A in Creamy on Instagram, Substack, and Blue Sky.
And catch us on our next episode of There's No A in Creamy, Vermont Politics, Culture, and Beyond in Apple Podcasts and Spotify.